The future is unpredictable.
It's an unknown road of possibilities, and it gives us hope.
The future is safe.
It can feel like this impending thing set in stone already.
Die Zukunft ist unberechenbar.
But it's not set in stone. You can change it.
El futuro es la aceptación.
The future is non-binary.
The future will be a world where people are able to identify how they want without persecution.
Because we can change everything we know and make it a better place not only for ourselves, but the future after us.
Because if 2020 has taught us one thing, it's that we'll never know what comes next. But if we stick together as a community, as a family, we will survive.
The future is pride.
El futuro es pride.
The future is
The future
pride.
is pride.
The future is
The future is pride.
The future is pride.
The future is
The
pride.
future is pride.
The future is pride.
The future is pride.
The future is
The future is pride.
The future is pride.
The future is
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for this panel titled The Future Is. My name is Brandon Wolf. I use he, him pronouns. And before I get into introducing myself and our fabulous panelists today, I'd like to, of course, thank our sponsor for this panel, Nordstrom. Nordstrom has long been committed to creating an environment where their customers feel a sense of community and their employees can be themselves, contribute their ideas, and do their very best work. Nordstrom believes that the support of the LGBTQ community enables them to better serve their customers and also attract and retain top talent. Nordstrom is proud to support New York City Pride and celebrate the many contributions of the LGBTQ community. Thank you to Nordstrom for helping put this on, and thank you, of course, to New York City Pride for bringing us together today. Again, I told you my name is Brandon Wolf, and to be honest with you, I am still fairly new to this work. On June 12th of 2016, I escaped Pulse nightclub with my life. That night, a man armed to the teeth, filled with hatred, charged in and killed 49, mostly LGBTQ people of color, including my two very best friends. That tragedy and their deaths propelled me into advocacy. I've spent the last 4 years being a national voice for common sense gun safety reform, last year becoming the first survivor of the Pulse shooting to testify before Congress. And now I do the work full time to help secure full civil rights protections for the LGBTQ community here in Florida and across the country. I've learned a lot in the last 4 years. I've learned about the need for our generation and the generations to come to step up and have our voices heard. I've learned just how crucial and critical it is to be civically engaged and not let current events just be a ticker on a screen or a channel we can change. And I've also learned just how much it means to bring your trauma to this work and how important it is to take care of ourselves, our mental and physical health, and to take a step away when we need it. And I know that we're going to get into that on our panel today. I'm really looking forward to talking about what the future truly is when young people are leading. Before we do that, I, of course, have to introduce our fabulous panelists. Again, thank you, New York City Pride. I'm so excited to share a few moments to chat with these fine, fabulous folks from across the country who are doing really important work. And I want to tell you a little bit about who I have here today. I'm very excited to have Chella Man with us. He is a 21-year-old artist based in Brooklyn, New York. He's given talks across the United States on the intersections of his identities, including a TEDx talk. He became a columnist for Condé Nast's first queer publication and was the first deaf trans masculine model to sign with IMG. On the acting side, he can currently be seen on the second season of the DC Universe series Titans. His work focuses on highlighting queer and disabled rights. I'm so excited to talk to Chella Man today. We also have Jamila Reddy. Jamila is a writer, a self-empowerment coach, a life enthusiast on a mission to help people manifest their dreams. Jamila is the creator of Make It Happen, an online course for creative, compassionate people who want to show up in the world powerfully and purposefully. Jamila's podcast, Deliberate and Doing It Afraid, features stories from their journey to their best life and the lessons that come from it. Jamila has spoken and written for TEDx, the Loveland Foundation, Afropunk, Ethel's Club, Greatest, The Body Is Not an Apology, and Shine. Really excited to dive deep on self-care and reclaiming what protest means with Jamila today. We also have with us today Shaun Ross. Shaun is a Bronx native, and although he is known for his work in the fashion world as the first male model with albinism, his recent work and current focus is the music industry. He's known for working on many music videos from Lana Del Rey's Tropico to Beyonce's Pretty Hurts. Shaun has graced the runways, campaigns, and magazines for designers and publications all the way from Givenchy to Alexander McQueen, Vogue, GQ, ID, and so many more. Shaun has decided to show the world that he is more than just a model by releasing his first single, Symmetry, along with his first album, debuting this summer. Really excited to chat with Shaun as well. And last but of course not least, we also have Tangina Stone. Tangina is an acclaimed New York City-based singer, songwriter, producer, and engineer. She has been championed as the universal breath of fresh air. Her eclectic blend of soul, rock, electronic, and R&B has garnered her international appeal and brought her to stages around the world. Her unapologetic honesty and quiet dominance shine through her music and presence. And as a queer woman of color, she's been highlighted as a trailblazer in an industry that traditionally has not celebrated artists like her. Whether on a stage, protesting, or in studio, Tangina is at home. Welcome to all of our fabulous panelists. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Great.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to see you. Chella Man, I want to start with you. And I think, the same question probably goes around the table. But first of all, how are you? This is a critical time. It's a difficult time. We've got a national uprising against systemic racism and police violence. We've also got a global pandemic that's taken over 120,000 American lives. How are you, and what are you doing to take care of yourself?
This is a great question. I've been answering to this question recently. I'm existing because there's just a lot of emotions, and it's kind of hard for me to say that I'm one thing. And honestly, right now, I just feel pretty anxious. For the first time, in 2020, I feel like I've had a lot of anxiety due to the current events happening. And I mean, I'm just really happy to be alongside all of you and be able to hold this conversation, because I think it's extremely imperative that we speak about these things. And I always just feel more connected when I'm with my queer community. But yeah, my answer is I'm existing.
That's great. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's a perfect word to capture how many of us are feeling. Jamila, same question goes to you. And I know you do so much work in the self-care and mental health space. I'd love if you could talk a little bit about how are you and how are you taking care of yourself in this moment?
Whenever I'm asked that question, I am really intentional about answering for the present moment. So in this moment, I am feeling energized and grateful and a little tired. And I'm taking care of myself actually by logging off. I deleted Instagram yesterday and it's still deleted
Oh my gosh.
today. And
that is brave. That is very courageous in today's world.
For real. It feels like a weight has been lifted. Even though I love it, I love, to echo what Chella Man said about being in community, and social media is a place where I find community, and I also know that it exhausts me. So I have to take lots of breaks. So these days, to take care of myself, I'm being really intentional about what I consume, not just food, but also the input. I'm super sensitive, so I have to be really mindful about just what I'm consuming media-wise, music, in my environment. So just trying to minimize chaos and clutter in my own world, inner and outer, and taking lots of space to kind of reset.
Yeah, I admire that. And I appreciate that you said food, because I think that's the only thing I've been inputting into my body lately. So if I could get your tips and tricks on how to stop feeding myself to feed my soul and my feelings, I think that would be great. Shaun, question goes to you. And I know, you do work across the arts. You do, work in the fashion industry and music. Talk to us about how you are and how you've been plugging into those things to make yourself whole.
Well, I definitely want to agree with the two statements I just heard, but
for me, I think more so with everything that's happening, more so than existing, I can definitely say that I feel like premonition is met. I used to have conversations with a lot of my friends before the pandemic happened, before everything that is happening right now. I've just had so many conversations about how the world needs a rest. I felt it for a very, very long time. I mean, I would be lying to all of you if I didn't say that right now, but I just felt the way that the world was going. It needed some form of relief. And even though this isn't a relief, it gives people a sense of thinking. I think that a lot of us live on autopilot and we don't like to take into accountability to have our own thoughts and how to actually process them and digest them. So this entire time, I'm looking like, okay, this is what I felt coming on. So during this entire time and space, I've just been trying to perfect my craft. I think that being inside of the fashion industry for 13 years and coming into music, one of the biggest obstacles that I've been having to go through is, again, like I'm pretty sure everybody here on this panel knows about, you have to prove yourself. You have to prove yourself to yourself first, and then if you want to other people. And I would also love to prove to myself that I am worthy to do music. So I've just been trying to perfect that craft this entire time, being inside of quarantine.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And, when people say I'm tired, well, at least when I say I'm tired, I mean, my soul is tired. And I feel like that goes for many, not just in our community, but really across the world. It's a tumultuous time. And I appreciate that you talked about, reclaiming what it means to be you, and just doing the work that makes you feel whole and you feel proud of yourself. There's a lot of power in that. So I definitely want to come back to that. I'm putting a pin in that. And then, over to you, Tangina. You said you're at home no matter what you're doing, whether it's protesting, whether it's, art. So talk to me about how you are, and how are you taking care of yourself, and if protesting is a part of that?
I think that protesting definitely is a part of that. It's been really difficult for me to figure out how to take care of myself during this time. In the beginning, I was sick, when everything first happened. So I went from like being really sick and unable to work, or do anything really for like 25 days, but get better. And during that time, I had to really think deeply about what it means for me to make progress and to be productive, and what my relationship is to productivity and if it's healthy or not. And I came to the conclusion that it wasn't. And just looking at, progress through lots of different lenses, and also just figuring out how to honor what I need in the moment. I had not broken quarantine at all because I was so traumatized, with everything that happened with COVID, until I went to protests, and it felt like what I needed. So I've been figuring out ways to honor, what I need while still, maintaining boundaries, very firm boundaries to keep myself safe. I think that I've figured out now what it means to both self-preserve and stay informed. And that's been really important. Self-preservation and just making sure that all of my decisions are decisions that help me live a life that feels sustainable for both my physical and mental health have been important. Honoring my healing process has been important. In this time, we've all had a lot of time to just look within. And I don't think that like everyone was necessarily ready for that, but we've had it nonetheless. And while looking in, for me, I've decided that a lot of things that I've been trying to heal from in my life that pertain to all the things in the world right now, that pertain to family and career stuff, the things I've been wanting to heal from, I'm going to grant myself those things instead of waiting on them to come from other people or systems, and being delicate with myself in that process. So that's what things have been like for me lately.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I appreciate you sharing so vulnerably. Also, I'm glad you're feeling better and you're well.
Thank you.
And I think I think you kind of teed up the next question that I have. Chella, I'll toss it to you, but folks, feel free as you hear things to kind of jump in. You talked about progress and understanding what productivity means. I think there's a lot of external pressures, especially on young people, to show up every day, all day, whether it's on social media, whether it's, writing something, posting something, that there is this drive to need to fill the vacuum with productivity, right? And so I guess my question to you, Chella, and then the rest of the group is, what advice do you have for young people who are struggling at home, who don't feel productive, who are feeling this pressure to keep producing content? What advice do you have for them? How do they create space for themselves in this moment?
Well, you know, this is something I'm continuously figuring out and practicing. And as a non-Black person, I feel like it's very essential that I show up and protest in one of the many ways. You know, as we're going to speak about, protesting doesn't simply mean being out in the streets. It could mean staying at home, laying in bed, donating, or educating yourself and those around you. So doing one of those things, personally, I feel like I am able to go out and protest. So I have been doing that quite a bit. And it just feels like that is where I really need to be right now. Again, especially as a non-Black person, I need to devote space and energy to Black people right now. But on top of that, I think it's also just figuring out how to do that in a way that's productive for myself, which means not triggering myself and doing it when I feel comfortable and able, which is a line I am continuously figuring out how to draw. But something that Raquel Willis, who's a Black trans woman, absolutely incredible individual, she recently tweeted something like, if you don't feel ready to be out there, and if you don't feel okay yourself, it's not helping anyone. We need you for this fight. So that just was another reminder to me that, I need to prioritize my own mental health, because it's not helpful if I'm not in a place that I'm mentally able to do any of those things. So I've been taking a step back in the past few days. Deleting Instagram, good idea, noted. Probably gonna test that out for a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it's a practice, I think. And when things are practice, you may never really reach that goal, but practicing it in itself can be productive. So to answer your question, I think everyone, especially youth right now, needs to really think about if they are in a space they can be of use right now to this movement, to others, and if they feel comfortable doing that.
Yeah. My note is, and I'm coming to you, Tangina, next. My note is that the producers are probably freaking out because they put everyone's Instagram handles on the bottom here. And Jamila has us all deleting Instagram by the end of today. So apologies to New York City Pride for that. Yeah, Tangina, what are your thoughts there? Because I think, you talked a bit about this self-discovery that you went on.
Yeah, I think that it's really important right now for youth to think about this. One thing that I learned while being sick and unable to work for 25 days, I know the exact day, hours, because it was that hard for me to just accept that I couldn't do anything. I was watching friends innovate and learn how to perform online and all this, and I had to sit. And I realized, you know what, this may be the only time in my life that I can rest, and there are no consequences for resting. However, there are consequences for not resting, very, very serious ones. So I think for the youth right now, it's really important to always weigh that out. The consequences for not resting and not taking care of yourself are so much deeper and so much worse than the consequences for getting that rest. I think it's important that a really brilliant friend of mine mentioned before that not everyone's role right now in this, I'm not quoting them verbatim, but not everyone's role in this situation is on the ground. That's very, very true. But it is important that we all remember we have a role. We all have a role. Everyone has a role. Whether or not you're a Black person or white person, we all have some kind of role that we can play. And it's just about figuring out what that is. And in doing that, your very, very best. Showing up in that way, your very, very best. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a healer and does not feel at all equipped or, to be the person that's out on the ground. But that role as a healer is really, really important. So I talked to her about it, and now she's figuring out ways to show up, for people who are on the ground. Everyone's role is important. So I think just figuring out that role and remembering that we have to sustain ourselves. This movement, this uprising is not something that's meant to start and just end. This is a continuum. And so we have to sustain ourselves. Everyone has to in this.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Shaun, you know, I think when I think of the fashion and music industries, I think about how much work goes into that. And so in this moment, I wonder if you have thoughts on, you know, you've lived this sort of high pressure, always being productive life where everything is about churning out new products and being innovative and being dialed in. How do young people cope in that kind of pressure environment, despite there being, you know, no way to do the normal things that they do? How do they build space for themselves?
Well, I think one of the so it's really weird. Jamila said that she deleted Instagram, and for a lot of my friends, I found that to be extremely helpful. For me, I personally have never ever felt the need to delete Instagram, and the reason why I don't think that I have a really good sense of self. Like I will honestly say that. Like I think a lot of people are not confident enough to say like confidently like I know who I am. Like you're always finding out who you are. You're never ever going to stop finding out who you are. But I have a very very good sense of who I am at this time in life. And with that being said, I've went through trial and tribulation of, you know, the comparing, and you always have this invisible person that's always on your back, like, you know, am I doing enough, am I doing enough? And that's why you have to sometimes go back and, you know, count your blessings. You have to go back and really really look at your resume, like of life in general, and just say like this is what I've done. And a lot of that doesn't always have to be so extensive. To us, success is so extensive when we don't realize that success starts with just breathing. And when you have kids today, that's a whole nother panel of discussion, to be honest with you. Youth today is just so, they're not, I guess in terms, they're not woke. They're not as woke as they think they are. And when I say that, like I see a lot of young kids, like I'll give you a great example, like Teen Vogue, what I really feel gave a voice to a lot of young, like kids today that are talking about, you know, about everything. But when I look at them, I'm like, are you speaking with knowledge? Are you digesting the knowledge that you receive, or are you just speaking? You know, sometimes you have to really, really understand what you are speaking about. So what I would love to say is like, you know, when you're in this space of social media, if you have to delete it, cool. But at the end of the day, like I don't ever look at social media and feel like I'm inadequate. I don't look at social media and feel like I have to be doing something. When I get up in the morning, like, yeah, I will say that I do feel that urgency of writing things, but I don't feel the urgency of like I have to write and post and do these things to feel relevant. Like relevancy, to be very honest with you, like when I look at some celebrities or very, very well-known people who have had like a very relevant life for like 20, 30 years, all I can think of is how tired are you? How tired are you of always being underneath the microscope? How tired are you of always being judged? How tired of you always being watched? And I get this place where my entire life, having albinism, even before wanting to be in fashion, do dancing, all these things, I've always been under a microscope. So I get the opportunity in a mental space to say, hey, if I'm going to post something, and let's say like, you know, like one thing that we all can agree, likes are a thing on Instagram. Sometimes you'll post something and it'll get like 20,000 likes or 10,000 likes. And then you go and you post, oh yeah, I passed my test today, and it gets like 2,000 likes. But you go and you post a picture of you half naked, or you go and you post a picture of you like in some bomb clothes, it gets all of the likes in the world. I think that you have to be okay with knowing that your mind and the way that you see things is okay. And it's okay that other people may not, you know, digest it the same way that you do. Like a lot of people don't have the same mental capacity that all of us have. And we hope that one day that they will. We hope that one day that they will have the broad minds and the experimental and amazing awareness that we have. You just have to pray that one day that people get to your level. So that's, I guess, what I would say.
Yeah, I love that. So, Tangina, let's go to you and then kind of round it out with Jamila.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I missed the last part. Was it me or Jamila?
Yeah, go for it, Tangina.
Okay. Yeah, I think a few things about what you're saying stand out to me. I think that I think it's really important that we don't generalize with the generation after us, because I think generations before us often did that with us. How many millennials, comments do we get? The avocado toast jokes went on for years and years. And I think that when we think about it, I feel like millennials, we're breaking the wheel. Like, we are jamming the wheel right now, and we're changing things in a major way so that generations behind us, and someone put this in context for me before when I was thinking about generational trauma. They're saying, you may not be the one person, that like ends generational trauma for your whole family, but you certainly may be that person that's like jamming the wheel and stopping the system so that others behind you can follow up and do that. I see, Generation X doing some amazing things beyond the Tide Pod stuff. and I think that they give me so much hope. They give me so much hope when I have conversations with my nieces and my nephews. They give me so much hope. I think that it's really important for us to remember that we are like the generation of unlearning some things. I think especially I'm a queer Black woman. There are queer Black folks here. I think about the very specific kinds of like homophobia, internalized homophobia and transphobia that I've had to work to learn, to unlearn. And so I think it's not even about learning for our generation. It's very much been about unlearning the ways that society has taught us to hate ourselves. And that process is really difficult. We have to remember that we weren't supposed to even know that these systems were in place. We were supposed to just seamlessly keep following them, and so now we are unlearning them. And that's not a pretty process, but it's a very, very important one. And so I think just remembering that we're the generation that's unlearning. But when I have a conversation with my niece or my nephew, it's no question about it. If I say, do Black lives matter? I was talking to my 5-year-old nephew yesterday on FaceTime, and do Black lives matter? Black lives matter. He seems to just know that and understand that. When as me, as a whole ass adult, had to like understand that this is, I understand that. Like, I had to, inform myself while in college and understand the movement. And so I think it's really important that we give that space, and that we also, if the generation after us needs our help, like, I think it's on us to help. I think it's just, I'm really impressed with some of the things that these children are doing. These babies give me a lot more hope than the generations before us that made it really hard for us, who spent time making avocado toast jokes instead. Yeah, there's something else that you said that really, really resonated. Oh, with Instagram. You're talking about Instagram. I think that boundaries are very, very important. And honoring one's capacities looks different for everybody. As a person, I'm an artist, and I remember spending so much time feeling like, I haven't gotten my due, and nothing meant anything until I got like the blue check, and like, that's how I felt at one point in time. And actually it was during this time being at home locked down and like, being sick with an illness that I watched lots of people, pass away from. I put a lot of things into perspective, and now my relationship with social media is much different. I realized a few things. One of them is that this social media is a tool for me, that me as an artist and as an activist, I can use this to like really share my message instead of using it, as a way to frame where I fall in this system, in this industry, and how much I should, like or dislike myself today. I've reframed the way that I think, with social media, but not everyone is there. That's me. That's where I am. And that's like how I can honor my capacities this way, but it looks different for everyone. So for some people, they may have to delete it, And I also think that, it's really, really important that, in addition to like honoring our capacities, we leave room for those things to change. They fluctuate, I don't know. Instagram can be, a tool, and it can also be something that's just not helpful. I've realized that when I post something on Instagram about a protest or about a movement or anything related to politics or my activism or music, I realized that in this uprising, one of my roles, in addition to being a person who's on the ground, is sharing information. And when people come to my profile and they see something that I post, I've learned that they do not go do their own research after reading what I say. And I'm sure we can say that for probably all of us in this group. So our role is really important. When we do choose to use social media, we have to remember that we are the source. When as all of us may go and, do our research before posting something and making sure that like we're super informed, for other people, when they read our posts, they view themselves as informed now. I officially can go ahead and move forward with this because Shaun or Chella or Jamila said this. And I don't have to do any research. Look, here's my source, your Instagram post. So I've realized that there is so much power in that. But we all have to be prepared to use that power in the way that is necessary. And if we're not ready for that right now, it's absolutely fine to delete it or take a break from it until it's okay.
Yeah, I appreciate what you said about being a cog in the wheel, right? Because it's not lost on me that millennials are who created and popularized social media. And,
Yep.
It was our generation that used information as a tool to begin to understand the world in ways that, our parents and our grandparents maybe didn't allow us to understand. And I think that's why I feel such a bond with Gen Z as well, because they've figured out how to perfect that process, right? And we're using social media to grow our understanding of the world and understand other people in a way we never have before. So I thought that was very poignant. Jamila, your thoughts on leaving space as a young person in this moment for yourself?
So something that I started thinking about after Mike Brown was murdered, when I was hearing Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, I had to ask myself, when I said Black Lives Matter, it wasn't just to convince someone else to believe that. It was affirming that for myself. And so I had to ask myself, I was confronted with the reality of being out of alignment, of saying Black Lives Matter, but then treating myself and treating my life as if it didn't. Not getting enough sleep, eating whatever, normalizing feeling bad or feeling okay. And so when I give myself space to rest, to be easeful, I am affirming the statement that my life is inherently valuable. And what I mean by my life is inherently valuable is that I am inherently worthy of ease, of joy, of pleasure, of rest, of health. And so that is not just something theoretical. It's not just a chant. It's actually a practice. Like Chella Man was saying, it's an everyday commitment to living, to embodying this theory, this statement, this claim, Black Lives Matter. So every single day, I make a choice to move through the world as if my life is precious and sacred. And I do that by giving myself permission to feel good, which is absolutely radical and revolutionary in a world where there's messaging constantly that my life is sort of dismissible or dispensable. It to me feels super revolutionary and like an act of protest for real, for me to say, no, I actually deserve ease. And so what that means is that I'm gonna sleep today. And giving myself permission to feel good is part of how I affirm the value of my own life.
I love that. I love that. And you kind of touched on my next question. I'm going to toss it to you, Chella. We are obligated to remember in this moment that Pride was born of protest. Pride is a riot, has always been a riot. It's always been a struggle to actualize justice and equality for all, to make that an institution, not a slogan. And so in that way, protest and resistance takes many forms in our community. And I wonder if you, Chella, have thoughts on what does protest and resistance mean to you? And what are some things you've done to reclaim those words?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is, like we were saying before, protesting is a continuum. I mean, it can literally mean absolutely anything, from being on the ground, supporting those who are on the ground, taking care of yourself, as Jamila just said, it's just any form of speaking out and doing something and not being complicit to the events that are happening around us. For example, a small thing that I did as a protest that was not on the ground was reminding everyone. I've recently seen a lot of incredible videos circulating, but none of which were captioned. And I feel like it's very important to remind people that when you're talking about being inclusive and when you're talking about pride, it truly isn't pride or inclusivity if you're not including the disabled community. And I think speaking out about that was just one small form of protest. And doing that in itself was to reclaim what protesting meant.
Yeah, I love that. And I love, to your point, that it is a continuum, right? A protest is not about showing up one day to get the Instagram content that you were looking for. It's about showing up every single day and asking yourself, to Jamila's point, how do we radically change the way we move throughout the world to give our lives meaning and value? Shaun, I wonder if you have thoughts on, protest and resistance and what do those things really mean to you?
For sure. I think the terminology and meaning, and I really want to also hear from Tangina after this, because I feel like we maybe, I don't know, I feel like we're maybe kin on this. I feel like protests have changed. Even before we were born, like to what it is today, like I think it has changed dramatically. I think that what people have to remember and what I think a protest should be today is you have to realize what is happening. Why are you protesting? I think that there are a lot of people out there, including the youth, including even not even just the youth, all ages, the purpose of why you're protesting. Yes, protest, like visibility is a great thing. Like visibility is one thing that our generation or this time specifically is like amazing. Like we get it. We are the most visible time ever. But there's also, in my opinion, a curse that comes with that. We're visible, but with visibility, and that's when it goes into Instagram. Like as long as it's visible and as long as I show you that I support you, that means that there is support. That's not accurate. Because you can also, you can go and support anybody publicly. Like you can go and support anybody publicly. Like I can give you a great example. There's a video right now that's going viral of a whole bunch of actors and actresses, some I've worked with. And it's about them talking about how they take responsibility. Me, in my opinion, despite from them all personally, I think that video is garbage. I think the video is garbage because they're reading a script. Nothing about it is heartfelt. Nothing about it feels real. And I think that that's what I see when it comes to social media, is that there are a lot of people out there who want to do things for the likes, who want to do it for like the views. I've been to about maybe 6 protests that I can say. The first 2, I didn't really go ham, but one thing that I definitely told myself was that I did not want to take a picture and I did not want to post it on my Instagram. Me personally, I didn't want to do it because I felt that it became a trend. And when you started to see these videos circulate on Twitter of girls, predominantly Caucasian, going and taking pictures in front of broken glass because they are, they want to feel, empowered. It's like, but you weren't even there. You weren't even there. You weren't even a part of what it was that was going on. And I just see a lot of that happening. So when I see protests and all of these things that are occurring, you can protest, but understand why you're protesting. When I'm inside of these crowds and people are saying, say his name, George Floyd, say her name, Breonna Taylor, after a while, when it is in repetition, it starts to sound like a nursery rhyme. And there's a sense that I feel when I hear people saying it, like, do you even know why you're saying his name? Do you even know what happened? Do you even know what you witnessed in modern day history? Do you even know, like, do you even realize, can you even fathom what has happened to you? And that is the issue that I feel like humans today can be so empathetic. in a way where they're just like, I will just go and I'm going to say it. I'm going to say his name, but then I'm going to also go back to the comfort of my own home where I'm not in danger at all. And that is the issue that I have. But it's a touchy subject because damn if you do, damn if you don't. And it's one of those things, but I feel like when people are protesting, make sure that you understand what is happening. And even like I said, like we had a conversation before this entire panel, and Chella was speaking yesterday, and you were talking about certain things that you feel comfortable and uncomfortable speaking about. You know, regardless of you not being a black man, you are a man of color. If there's somebody out there that wants to, practice racism or white supremacy, you fall in that same category. You're not safe the same way how a black person isn't safe. So when I feel like there are people who are in the room that they feel like, oh, like, yeah, like Black Lives Matter, or I'm doing the best that I can. If you feel like you are doing the best that you can and you feel like it's not enough, look at yourself first and ask yourself, how would I feel if this happened to me?
That's really poignant. And Tangina, coming to you, I think we've touched on not only what is protest, what is resistance, but also a bit of knowing your history, right? And grounding yourself in where we've come from and why we're here today. So I wonder if you have thoughts on, what does protest and resistance mean to you, and why is it important to ground that in our history?
I think that it's really important to ground that in our history because, the Sankofa symbol. I remember, fun fact, I remember moving to Brooklyn. I'm originally from Ohio, and I've been in Brooklyn for a long time. And I remember going to the African burial grounds and learning about all the symbols that you see often in architecture in Brooklyn. The Sankofa symbol, the heart, was one of them. And remembering that, that symbol in so many ways means knowing where you come from to get where you're going. During all these protests recently, I've been protesting for years and years now, and I've been having conversations with my grandmother a lot. She used to protest as well, and she was born in the 50s, and so my grandma and I have been sharing information about protests, and she's been giving me tips on how to stay safe, giving me tips on how to, create a place, for people to meet up afterwards, just stuff like that. And even my grandma saying, you might go to jail. Sometimes that happens, and, be prepared for it. And if this happens, this is what you should do, having those conversations. So I think it's important that we remember, both within the LGBT community, also, just as a black person, like remembering like my roots in this, remembering that so much of my life and so many of the different ways that I've learned to protest and that I actively protest wouldn't be possible, without black trans women, wouldn't be possible without women like my grandmother, wouldn't be possible. None of this would be possible if I didn't have this model. And so I think that we have to remember what we're doing right now will one day be written in history books, and these babies are going to read it and they're going to learn from what we do. So again, I think we're the cog in the wheel. To touch on some of the stuff that Shaun was saying, I think that you're talking about performative allyship, and I think that absolutely has to be addressed all the time. And I've talked to people about this because accountability is not just a one-time thing that accountability, sometimes you have to always learn from it. I pointed this out to a person. I'm like, if I had a problematic thing that I posted 10 years ago, best believe that I'm still going to be prepared to be accountable for that. And for what, whatever I said, however that may have harmed a person. I think that it can blur the lines right now, Shaun, with people who think that just posting a black square is enough. And I've had lots of conversations with different organizers and especially lots of allies. So I've protested a lot in New York recently. My partner and myself, we're both queer black women, and we protest together. And when we go, I've been protesting with one of my best friends. He's a cisgendered heterosexual white male, and his partner, a cishet white woman. And they come with my partner and I to the protests to ensure that if anything goes down, that they can be a barrier between police and us. And so I've had some really interesting conversations with white folks who are organizing and are allies. And they've talked to other white allies about what it means if you decide that you want to come in person physically to a protest. It's really important that allies understand that in this, the role of allies is to help amplify our voices. Is to help amplify us, not to speak over us, not to hijack what's going on, none of that. I've talked to I remember being in college and writing a paper about this, and I talked to some of the people involved with the New York chapter of Black Lives Matter. I talked to like the person who was like the head of the chapter at the time, and she told me that one of the biggest challenges at Black Lives Matter protests, you know, from the beginning, was that often what would happen is that violence would be incited, you know, by a young cis white male, and then, you know, when the police bring out the batons and violence happens and arrest happens, it's Black folks who are getting put in handcuffs. And that was a really big challenge. So I think it is extremely important that allies, when they decide to show up at a protest, again, Shaun, to your point, think about why you're protesting. Like, understand that, and also be prepared for the fact that this may be an ongoing conversation with yourself. And it's not on Black folks to have that conversation with you. It's not on us to do that labor. It's on you to constantly be informing yourself, to constantly be having conversations with yourself and with your other white peers about what it means to be a white person who shows up. One of my friends who organizes, she's a Jewish white woman, cisgendered, and she lives in New York and she organizes all the time. And she's amazing at what she does. And she put it simply like this. She said, you know, for any white person that wants to come to the protest today, I'm going to put it nicely. If you're not prepared to put yourself between a Black person and an officer at a protest, then being on the ground may not be for you, because that's what's needed right now of our allies. That's what we're calling for right now. It's not to speak over us. We don't need the megaphone taken away. It's not about that. It's helping amplify us. It's helping to focus on the issues that we're bringing up and that we're fighting for our lives. So if you're interested in helping in that effort, great, you know, but don't make this about your life right now, because right now it's our lives that are extremely at risk. You know what I mean? And we're grateful for allies, but that doesn't mean that we deserve more labor because we have them. You know what I mean? So be mindful of the labor that you're asking of people. Like, this is a great resource for people to come back to if they want and listen to it. But, you know, to Shaun's point, think about why you're protesting, and don't expect a person of color to do the labor to explain that to you. I should say, not even just people of color, Blacks specifically that I mean. Don't expect a Black person to do that labor for you. I have to say that, like, plainly to make it clear.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And thank you so much for that really important reminder about what kind of labor we're heaping onto people who are already busy fighting for their lives. I think that's a perfect point. Jamila, we are just about out of time, but I do want to quickly go around, give you a chance for some final thoughts, and also to tell us what your plans for Pride are.
So something that, thinking about protest and resisting violence, I'm also very aware that violence is not just physical, and that there's a sort of secondhand violence that happens to our minds and to our spirits as a result of witnessing violence, as a result of living in a world where your life is constantly devalued. And so I think part of resisting violence is also protecting my spirit and making sure that I know that it is on purpose that people feel overwhelmed, exhausted, burnt out, hopeless. And so part of how I resist is by making sure that I am cultivating the energy to continue, like Tangina said, to be in this for the long haul, to make it sustainable. And protecting my energetic sphere, protecting my spirit and my mind is also, that feels equally as important. And for all of us too, so that we're not allowing ourselves to be depleted, so that these systems can continue to proliferate because we're all too tired to do anything about it. And so I am celebrating Pride, honestly, with my family. I've been quarantining since early March. I live with 7 other human beings, all of my family members from 2 years old to 84 years old. And so we had a little Pride dance party up in here. It was a production, okay? Everybody was dressing up and we played some music and danced. But yeah, just kind of like staying connected to myself. Doing a lot of affirmation in this time, doing a lot of like self-celebration and self-love practices. That has been kind of it is an ongoing, to everyone's point, it's an ongoing celebration. It's not just a one-time thing. So celebrating myself every day by being gentle and generous with myself.
I love that. I love that. Chella, how about you? Plans for Pride?
Plans for Pride, I think, well, first of all, that was beautiful, and I feel like I'm doing the same all over here, and spending it with my chosen family and biological family here and quarantining, and yeah, just having really important conversations right now, and practicing my own self-care and, rewiring what it means for me to be productive right now, and to continue that is kind of what I've been focusing on this month of Pride. But I mean, I consider Pride to be, infinite, so it's just like a continuous work.
Period.
Yes, I'm here for infinite pride. I'm here for that.
Yes.
It's always pride in my house too. Shaun, out in Los Angeles, what are your plans for Pride?
I agree with Chella. Like, literally, you took the words right out of my mouth. Like, that's for me. So, I as a young Black gay man, I experienced like I was telling you guys yesterday, I experienced going to Christopher Street. Like, I can definitely say like I'm beyond fortunate to have walked the parade, vogued in the parade, the whole nine. But we're getting older. I will be 30 next year, and a lot of that. We've done enough. So for me, but Pride is infinite. Pride is infinite, and I think that's the issue. And I said that yesterday, where like even when it comes to Black history, like it's not just a month. Pride is not just a month. It is something to be proud of. It is something to happen all year long, and something that I think that people have to also realize. Where, in my opinion, I personally have always felt like the Pride flag should be updated, the colors with the skin tones as well, because Pride is something that has been started for the LGBTQ plus community, but it is also to just have pride in yourself in general as an individual. And people need to understand that and realize that. And that's why I feel like Pride is all year long. Like, there's so many things to be proud about as individuals. People go through so many things every day, from who knows, from weight loss to drug addiction, and people should feel proud about conquering those things. And that's why I feel like Pride should be infinite. So for me, Pride is every single day. I'm proud to be who I am as an individual. I am proud of doing the things that I do. I'm proud going to Home Depot in the next 30 minutes.
That's great. I love it. I'm going to be proud not eating my feelings for the rest of today, thanks to y'all.
It's okay. EC, be proud of
that. Tangina, close us out. What are your plans for Pride?
My plans for Pride, it's funny because initially this year I would have been performing at Pride, which I was really excited about, but I'm still doing some kind of performance. I'm not sure how many of the details I can share, but my performance initially was supposed to be the national anthem. It's not going to be that. I'm doing something that in my mind, I think will be healing for our community. Will be special and I don't know, I'm celebrating Pride the way that our ancestors did. I'm celebrating Pride the way that it initially started, by resisting. So you're going to catch me in the streets. You're going to catch me protesting in every single way that I can. And you're going to catch me amplifying voices that I think are very often left out of conversations around, Black Lives Matter right now. I think I just have to say this on here. I think that it's really, really important that we get into the habit of celebrating and fighting for the lives of Black trans folks right now. My home state, Ryan Milton, was killed in my home state, and I had to talk to people at home in Ohio about why protests have not been mentioning that in Ohio. And so I think that, for Pride, I'll be spending a lot of time focusing energy and attention and protest and in whatever, ways I'm informing folks, I'm going to be making sure that I'm focusing on that specifically. Because again, many of the lives that all of us, I'm sure in this, in this chat right now live, our lives wouldn't be possible the way that they are. Our protests wouldn't be like, possible the way that they are without without the Black trans women that initially, started these acts of protest. So that's how I'll be celebrating Pride, by continuing on the fight, in all the ways that I personally can, and encouraging everyone else to join me in that. So yeah, happy Pride.
I love that. Happy Pride. I am so grateful for all of you. I'm grateful for New York City Pride for putting this panel together. I learned so much. I hope that you did too. I think what I take away is that the future is now. The future is young people being heard. The future is a celebration of our progress in terms of pride, but it's also a protest. It's about demanding justice and equality for all. It's about insisting that our lives absolutely matter. So appreciate all of you for tuning in. Appreciate New York City Pride, and of course our fabulous panelists. I hope that you feel inspired. I hope you feel motivated, and I hope that you enjoy Pride.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Pride, everyone.
Thank you. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride. I'm so tired.